Next, I had the pleasure of working with two amazing ladies on this next keynote. Christie Wilson, who works at Google and is the co-founder of the Tecton project, and Zainab Abubakar, who works at InterSwitch and is also the open source project coordinator for SheCode Africa. Even with the remote collaboration, this was real fun to put together for you, so I hope you enjoyed as much as we did.
Hey everybody, I'm Christie Wilson. I'm a software engineer at Google, and I'm really excited to be talking to you today, even though I can't actually look at your faces while I'm making this. But this format does give us some advantages. I can do some things I couldn't do if I was speaking to you face to face. I can introduce you to my cat. This is Yoshimi. She doesn't have a black belt in karate, she doesn't work for the city, but she does take lots of vitamins because she is 18 years old. Anyway, about 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of working with some really cool people to make Tecton. But if you know me, then you'll know that wherever I've ended up, I've always ended up gravitating towards CI/CD related work. In fact, I'm so passionate about CI/CD that I'm actually writing a book about it now. Now, writing a book is a pretty intimidating thing, so I figured that I better just plunge right in and get started, otherwise I wouldn't ever do it. So I figured I'd start with something easy, like a definition. So I put my fingers to the keyboard and I started to type, CI/CD is. CI/CD is continuous integration / continuous delivery? So then I really went down the rabbit hole. I started to define integration, I started to define delivery, I defined continuous, I got really caught up in the difference between continual and continuous. But in the end, I found out something really interesting that might surprise you, which is CI/CD isn't real. And I say this as somebody who makes CI/CD tools and who is writing a book about CI/CD. Let me step back a bit and explain how I got to this conclusion. Let me take you through the history of continuous delivery. Our first stop is the 90s. In 1994, a guy named Grady Booch, he's the creator of UML, coined the term continuous integration. So at this point, as early as 94, we have the term continuous integration, which is the CI in CI/CD, but we don't have a clear definition for it yet. In 1997, Netscape releases Tinderbox, which is maybe the first bona fide CI system. And then in 1999, we get extreme programming, which has a lot of the same tenets as continuous integration, but doesn't mention it explicitly. Now let's jump to the 2000s, when things really start to get interesting. In 2004, Kosuke gets sick of breaking the build, so he creates Hudson, and he releases it to the world in 2005. In 2007, continuous integration finally officially becomes a thing, with a book of the same name being published in the Martin Fowler Signature Collection. So, in 2007, we have continuous integration, and what it means is it's a software development practice where you integrate your changes frequently, at least daily, and you verify those changes with automated builds and tests. Finally, let's jump to the last decade, when things start to happen really fast. In 2010, we have the Continuous Delivery book come out by Jez Humble and David Farley, which makes continuous delivery a thing. That's the CD in CI/CD. And what is continuous delivery? It's a software development pattern, or as Martin Fowler calls it at the time, a discipline, where every check-in leads to a potential release. This means you could release to production at any time. And also, the time between when you make a change and when it's available to users is minimized. Then, in 2011, Hudson is forked and released as the project we all know and love, Jenkins. Now something strange happens. In 2013, this is about 3 years after the Continuous Delivery book comes out, CI/CD just pops into existence on the internet as a term. And as far as I can tell, nobody actually created it. I do have a theory about where it came from though, which I'll show you. Remember, at this point, it's about 3 years after continuous delivery became a thing and 6 years after continuous integration became a thing. So you can imagine that both of these terms are kind of circulating around. Okay, we need to increase velocity. We need to increase revenue. Maybe we should try that continuous integration thing.
Don't you mean continuous delivery?
And bam, just like that, you've got CI/CD. Then look at the last 5 years. Tools start popping up like crazy. You've got Spinnaker, Screwdriver, Jenkins X, Tecton, and then in 2019, you've got the creation of the CDF. So let's get back to the question that started all of this. What is CI/CD? It's not a term that anybody created on purpose. And if you look at the way we use it, it seems to mean CI or CD. Because if you say, I'm doing CI/CD, you might mean you're running tests. Or you might mean that you're deploying straight to production on every commit with a blue-green rollout. It's all CI/CD. Thanks for joining me for my whirlwind tour of the past of continuous delivery. Next, Tracy Miranda is going to talk to you about the present.
Thank you, Christie. What a great summary of the past. Hey, I'm Tracy, and I'm going to walk you through the present of continuous delivery and then take a glimpse into the future. But first, Christie, I love your New York backdrop, especially since we can't really travel. So here's some gratuitous scenery of Ottawa, Canada, where I live. This is the Rideau River at a beautiful time of year. Also, I don't have a cat, but this is Mumu, who is very friendly, and the kids would like her to move in with us. Now to the present. And we need to ask ourselves, why does continuous delivery matter? But before we answer that question, let's do some context setting for 3 terms that are often used interchangeably and in a confusing way, especially if you're new to the area. Agile, CI/CD, and DevOps. Remember, we're not using CI/CD anymore. Let's call it continuous delivery. While there is overlap, each one tends to have a distinct focus. Agile on processes, DevOps on culture, and continuous delivery on tools. And this is reflected in our CDCon program, where while we touch on all these topics, there's a heavy focus on tools that help you drive the automation. So, why does continuous delivery matter? Every business is under tremendous pressure to transform itself into a software business, and continuous delivery is the cornerstone to this. Picture an organization that can deliver new features faster than the competition. Picture an organization that can take advantage of fast feedback from its users to have a much deeper relationship. And picture an organization that can pivot when needed in a response to industry and world events. Research shows these to be the impact of continuous delivery. But there's one more reason, one which to me is far more important than all of those, and that is burnout. Now, I don't know about you, but these last few months have been pretty challenging. And with all this craziness going on in the world, the least we can do is have our professional lives free of extra stress and as good as they can be. Scientific evidence shows that investing in technical practices for continuous delivery reduces burnout and deployment pain. Like, who doesn't want that? Now, this incredible research comes from the amazing book that is called Accelerate by Nicole Fortin, Jez Humble, and Jean Kim. I cannot recommend this book enough. Read this book. It spells out exactly what we need to do to become high-performing technology organizations. And let's see what Accelerate has to say about continuous delivery. Continuous delivery is a set of capabilities that enable us to get changes of all kinds, features, configuration changes, bug fixes, experiments, into production or into the hands of our users safely, quickly, and sustainably. And it goes on to outline 8 continuous delivery capabilities. Let's take a quick look at these, but go outside and enjoy some of that fall scenery. The 8 continuous delivery capabilities are: Number 1, use version control for all production artifacts. 2, automate your deployment process. 3, implement continuous integration. 4, use trunk-based development methods. 5, implement test automation. 6, support test data management. 7, shift left on security. 8, implement continuous delivery. So, we know what continuous delivery is and why we should be doing it. But the reality is that most of us are not really doing it, certainly not as well as we could be. And I think this comes down to 3 main reasons. So the first is the rise of cloud native and microservices has led to a shift in technology under our feet. While it has dramatically improved what we can achieve, especially when it comes to scaling, there are many challenges. Teams that were working on a monolithic code base, deploying a monolithic application, only had a small number of environments to worry about. But now there is a proliferation of environments and code bases that makes continuous delivery more challenging, yet ever more important. Second, we've seen a rise in the number of tools in the continuous delivery landscape. However, it is usually left to the user to figure out how to put those tools together in a way that works to create a full solution. And this is often a case of a lot of trial and error. That, coupled with a lot of confusion and FUD, makes it very challenging to figure out what works best for you. And on top of that, we have new technology coming at us at a rate faster than ever before. Now, the third thing is simply that change is hard. People and organizations have limits on the amount of change they can absorb at any one time. Well, that's certainly what we thought. But we've learned to change our habits a lot in the last few months. We've learned to socially distance, wear a mask, and wash our hands as if we're going into surgery. Well, most of us have. Change is hard, but it turns out when it becomes necessary or when we have a shared purpose, then we are able to adapt much faster than we think we can. But nevertheless, this still remains challenging for most of us. So that sums up our present. We know what continuous delivery is, we know why to do it, but we still need to figure out how. And I think that's why we're all here today, so we can do that together. Okay, now on to the future. There is a saying that the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed, and that is very much the case in our industry. Our community is helping build that future, and there is so much I could say about it. But I am not going to talk about the power of GitOps, or the impact of progressive delivery, or the paradigm shift that is MLOps. There are folks who are far more qualified and far more into the space talking about that here today. Instead, what I'm going to talk about is a future that involves open source and people. We know that open source thrives in difficult times like a recession. And this is in part to the distributed development model, but lots of other factors. Openness, transparency, and collaboration have time and time again proven to be the only way to deal with global scale challenges. But when it comes to open source communities, it feels like we have only just scratched the surface of who could be involved. There is so much more potential for open source for a new generation, a globally diverse community. This reality is at our fingertips, but we need to make it happen. Now, back in May, the Jenkins project recorded its highest number of contributors ever, and that was in a pandemic. This was in part thanks to a Hackfest, which saw contributors from around the world. And it was there that I met Zainab Abubakar from Nigeria. Now, Zainab went on to get the Google Season of Docs sought for the Jenkins project. And she is an amazing person, passionate about open source and community, and has agreed to come and share that story with us. Let's hear now from Zainab.
Hello, I'm Zainab Abubakar. I work at InterSwitch Group Nigeria. InterSwitch is a fintech company specialized in building financial solutions across Africa. Aside my 8 to 5 at InterSwitch, I'm also the open source programs manager for She Good Africa, a non-profit organization focused on empowering young women in tech across Africa. And aside that, I'm also a technical writer with Jenkins for the Google Season of Docs program. While I can't really go outside because of the noise and all that, this is the streets of Lagos. This is Ebutemeta Yapa in Lagos State. This is what it looks like. So I don't have a cat like Kristen, but I have a dog here. I have a dog. My darling, his name is Bailey. I first heard about Jenkins CI/CD in 2017 when I joined InterSwitch. Well, I must confess, I was a bit scared at first because this was something that was totally new to me. But when I started understanding what this tool is about and what it does, I started getting more interest in CI/CD. So I'm a software engineer, and my job was not to really understand how to set up Jenkins on a server, how to install Jenkins. It was majorly just how to use it. Sometime last year, InterSwitch introduced Spinnaker, and this just made it better. They took the automation to another level. One of the things that motivates me daily, that keeps me on my toes, that wants me to do more for Jenkins is the amount of support, the amount of, I don't know how to put it. The amount of support, let me just put it, the amount of support I get from Jenkins community. I keep saying this anywhere I have the opportunity to talk, or like the community was so welcoming. I was scared because yes, I had used Jenkins, as I said, but I didn't really understand the core of Jenkins, but I wanted to understand that. I was ready to understand that, and the community was also ready to put me through. So it's very important that you have that open source communities are close knit and they are ready to put in the work also to help contributors that are new. So She Code Africa's vision is to empower women in tech across Africa. And from where I grew up in the northern part of Nigeria. And in this part of Nigeria, we have a lot of females who their lives are basically decided for them right from when they are born. Like, their husband is already picked for them, who they will get married to once they're done with probably secondary school is already picked for them. So I was opportuned actually to finish my education because my parents were learned, but I saw a lot of these ladies every day. I actually have some of them who were my friends in secondary school, but were not able to finish either because their parents had decided or one thing or the other. And though this had always been in me, but it was one of my goals that whenever I want to be able to empower women in Nigeria. So, but we've been able to organize webinars, open source challenge to encourage more women in Africa to get into technology and also to get into open source contribution. We actually had a lady called Ruth. She made her first open source contribution during one of our webinars where we had a practical session to getting started with open source, submitting your first pull request. She actually submitted her first pull request during that webinar. And in the subsequent month, the following month, we held a challenge where she was able to record 10 open source contributions in just that month. And since then, she has attended events, she has spoken at events, written articles on contributing to open source, and this is what She Code Africa is about: empowering women, motivating women to do more. There are some ladies out there who want to actually do these things, but because they've not gotten the right opportunity or the motivation to do it, that's why they've not started or they've not gotten to where they want to be. And that is what She Code Africa intends to do. I think a lot of people think that contributing to open source is all about giving, but it's not. It's give and take. You give to the community and you get as much as you give, if not even more. Because I think I've gained more than I've actually been able to give to most of these communities. I gained skills, networks. I'm able to meet new people. So I think I'll just encourage other people out there to get more into open source and encourage the communities also to be welcoming and be ready to accept and help these new contributors and put them through. Thank you very much for listening. You can reach out to me on Twitter at @zcodes and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much, Zainab. That is super inspiring. And I'm so glad to be part of an inclusive community, one that welcomes cat lovers and dog lovers alike. Now, Zainab for me embodies that powerful intersection of continuous delivery, open source, and community. And to me, that is the future. And it's simply a winning combination. Come join us building that future. Thank you so much.